Welcome to the Markets Happy Hour podcast, a weekly markets update for investors the world over. Each week we discuss inflation, geopolitics, interest rates, equity markets, and other asset classes. To try to answer the question, what does this mean for my investment portfolio? Let's dive in.
So starting with inflation, there is a sense that it's starting to look convincing. There has been a sign that new cars have had their sharpest jump in 4 years, and that perhaps this has been masked by falling used car prices. This is perhaps a canary in the coal mine around tariffs. Even though it's been suggested that tariffs have essentially worked their way through markets with very little effect on inflation, new cars with the components, the metals, that is clearly an area that is going to show an increase at some point. The car makers are looking at their own troubles internally. They cannot necessarily absorb higher component costs for much longer. So that could be an example of a transmission effect that we're seeing in cars work their way through. So let's see, again, one to watch in terms of inflation. However, when it looks like the some of the other range, we're looking at the core PCE and core CPI, whereas CPI is now starting to come comfortably close to target, we can see that the PCE, that is one of the preferred measure of the Fed, has stalled, and that we just simply don't have the data when it comes to PCE. So even though inflation is heading in the right direction, we do not necessarily have the full picture yet. If we look at the breakdown that Bloomberg helpfully provides, we can see that there has been a diminution in the components of inflation that services represent, and that has been something that's very welcome. We can see from this chart on the left that services, as the red bar, has been the lion's share of inflation as food and energy have come down, and even energy has been negative at times. But the fact that inflation has been now driven down by lower service inflation is perhaps, again, getting to this weakness in labor, that much of service prices were driven by a spike in labor. Again, it is important to remember this is not deflation, this is disinflation only. So we are still seeing inflation in the cost of services, which of course would accord with what the individuals on the ground are experiencing. Again, looking though at other, whether we trim the mean CPI, median CPI, super core CPI, or sticky price CPI, all of these measures are coming down. And what has been quite welcome news outside the US has been the sharp fall in UK inflation, which has fallen sharply to 3% in January there, which is increasing the odds of a rate reduction by the Bank of England in the month of March.